Hello, here is a video drawing instruction tutorial that I'm going to try and just talk about creating relatively quick and hopefully relatively accurate different box structures that are critical in drawing pretty much anything. So I want to be able to understand how to draw a box in different dimensions, different sides, lengths, widths, heights, and any sort of rotation and tilt, and just anywhere in three-dimensional space. And it can get quite tricky because it's perspective related. But I'm going to try to do something here is hopefully somewhat simple and manageable, and a little process that you can check out, and hopefully it'll help you too. But one thing I'm trying to do when I'm drawing these is I want to think about this point where three edges meet. I'm just going to assume that you can see three sides or faces depending on the orientation of the box. I'm going to think about this point, and I'm going to think about a combination of threes. First of all, I'm going to think about three sets of lines. There's 1, 2, and 3. So like I mentioned here, one of the things that's tricky is knowing what you're paying attention to at any given time you're drawing. So being able to isolate those from those and organizing it in your brain this way might be helpful. I know it is for me. And I'll mention that later. Actually, I'll mention it right now. When I am testing and wanting to check, depending on what my setup is, it is possible to rotate things around so you can sort of maybe a little easier try to focus your attention on certain aspects and focus out the other stuff. It's one of the trickiest parts of drawing, I feel like. So I'm gonna start off with not rotated, and then we'll get to rotated ones. But here's the main idea that I will demonstrate for you. As I mentioned, I like to sort of think it in terms of threes. Helps me remember. So I'm going to start out with this little guide. It's pretty messy, Farron. Guideline for a vertical edge. And I'm literally going to give it an arrow. And then I'm going to come back to this main home point. This is my center point right here. And this is the point that is closest to the viewer of this box. And for me, I've just found in a lot of ways is the most helpful when I'm trying to make sense of all these angled lines, and it's easy to get lost, and I still do, and sort of thinking, wait a minute, which way, what line goes with who? And so that's going to happen on a fairly regular basis. I'm going to keep coming back to this guy, this point right here, and reorienting myself. So I'm going to start with this down. I'm going to start with an angled guideline in that direction, up and slightly up and to the right. And one up and to the left. This has just helped me getting oriented to what is up and down in this drawing, and by definition what is side to side as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and sort of identify the lengths that I actually want these edges of this box structure that I'm going to be drawing. So I have these 3 lines emanating from this main central point. I have these 3 points. First thing I'm going to do next is think about the sets of lines. I'm going to address each set of lines individually. First one I'm going to do is these verticals. So I have that one already. I'm going to sort of get that in my brain. I'm going to come over to this other point here, and I'm going to sketch in a guide line that is not exactly vertical, but is slightly angling in. I'll exaggerate it. That's the angle of that main vertical. I want this line to be slightly angling in. And the idea is that eventually, way down there, those lines will converge. That one, just this one, maybe get that one in my brain again. And then back over to this other point. And in a similar fashion, I'm going to draw a guideline for that edge that is angling also towards this main. I call these my 3 teams, and then I assign that these main ones are the captains of each team. I'm goofy that way, but the idea is that these other lines need to be angling at least slightly towards the team where the team captain is going. Team captain? So that's the first set of lines. Now I'll come over to my second. These here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start with the point that doesn't have a line going with it. I'm going to sketch in a guideline that I can tell is eventually going to converge up with this main team captain line way out there. This is where it gets tricky because it's hard to really kind of gauge. And then I'm going to come back to this other point. What helps is to be able to sort of draw them out pretty far so you can really start comparing if they're angling towards each other, because when you're just trying to gauge overall and not sure where to focus your energy, that's really tricky to do. So right now I'm just focusing on this second team of 3. And now to my third team. Once again, I'll be at this point and I'll probably be confused and bamboozled and all sorts of other fun words. So I'll come back here and go, okay, remind myself, what was I doing? I was doing 3 sets of 3 lines. Okay, there's 1. Okay, there's 2. And I'm going to come to this third one. I'm going to... It helps to hum, maybe. I don't know. Something like that. And by the time these are, these angles will really start, like I've mentioned several times, get confusing because your brain isn't sure where to focus. It helps if you've trained your muscle memory to draw straight lines in that direction. I'll work on that later. So that's the idea. I've got, once again, these 3, these 3, and these 3. And if I can isolate them and at least focus in on, okay, are on this team, for this team captain, is this slightly angling towards it? And that one's slightly angling in towards it, both in that direction. Like I think I mentioned, I can then rotate it, and that will make it a little bit easier to gauge how things are going for this second set. Whew, it is confusing, isn't it? And then my third set, same sort of thing. I can gauge if it seems like those edges are angling towards this one. So you could get really crazy involved with perspective and vanishing points and something like this, and that will help. But to quickly try to get at least a little bit of accuracy, try this idea where you're angling things in towards the team captain. Before I move on to sort of a rotated one, just really briefly, sort of the further away the edge is from the team captain, technically the more it will need to be angled. So this one and this one is going to be a little bit more parallel, even though this is still needing to angle in. This will be a little bit more angled. So if it's further away, just try as you're sketching things out, play with angling things a little bit more or not. That was an interesting one because my brain was wanting me to believe it was further away, so more parallel, but actually it wasn't. So that's the idea. That's the main idea. I'll try to do a couple. Oh, no heck. If even that skill seems a little too crazy, I would break it down even more and just say, okay, let's practice making a bunch of guidelines, guide arrows, vectors, and see if I can just draw a line, this side of it, one side of it, and the other side of it, that are both slightly angling towards that first team captain line. I'm going fast here, but that's the idea for that. That's definitely worthwhile if you figure out that you're still having a hard time figure out how to simplify and practice. So let's do a couple examples here and then I'll let you go. Or not. So I'm going to start out with this home point. And not just a actual vertical direction. Start out with, and then move, not start, move to my second. And then my third. Now the angles of what's possible in this, the possibilities of these angles is sort of a larger discussion, but I'm going to suggest just sort of keeping it so it looks a little bit like, oh, if you rotated it, it would be sort of a smashed letter Y somehow. That's mostly to say that, you know, I'm not going down that road. So I have these team captains here. Then I'm going to choose the specific distances of the edge. Then I'm going to focus in on my 3 sets of 3. So this is my main one. I'm going to come to this point, sketch in something that's slightly angling. Then over here, sketch in this one that is slightly angling and even a little bit more than this one. It's my first set. Next set, that one. Get that one angling, coming back to this point. I'll repeat, I keep coming back here when I get lost. Draw one from here and one from here. Those are slightly angling towards the team captain. This is the tricky one. And once again, I may have already said it, but it's tricky partly because you need to kind of get pretty far away from all the confusion going on in here before you can really get a sense of, you need to extend these guidelines to really get a sense of whether or not they're angling towards the team captain. Let me kind of rotate this and check my handiwork here. That angle was seeming a little too angly. Let me extend this out some more so we can judge it a little bit better. So, is that perfect? No, but as long as you follow that main idea, angling, starting off with team captains, and then when you're adding the non-captain, the rest of the team, make sure they angle towards the captain. You'll be off to a decent start with and have a better shot than if you're just really trying to observe it and gauge it, because that can be really, really difficult. Perhaps the last thing I'll do is not that, but I'll try to do one that that I'll start off and it will be sort of wrong, and then I'll try to come back and correct it. Forget those points. Now I'm lost right now, and I confess it. So I'm going to come back and try to remember what I was doing. I got these three main edges, and I need teams. So I have this. Now team two, this, actually I did those reverse, I think. But yeah, now to the third team. See, I really was. I was like, oh Jesus, what was I doing? So starting off something like this is very common, and you'll be drawing this and going, it doesn't seem quite like a box structure, and you won't be sure why. And then I'm going to just come back and reinforce the whole technique. I'm going to say, okay, where are my main lines? That one, that one, that one. Let's go to this team. Reinforce the distances of the edges that I've chosen and decided. So I can tell as I look at this one that the other players are indeed not angling closer to the team captain, but they're getting further away. So that's when I would need to come back and say, hey, wait a second. I want them to be angling towards the captain. Oh, I'm having a little bit of fun saying captain, I'm not gonna lie. So that corrects that one. Let's check out the others. That was just a sketchy, but I think it was angling slightly towards it. That's okay. This one could argue is just ambiguous as far as what direction it's starting and staying in, which is another good example. A lot of times the spirit of a line may be starting in the right direction, but gets a little bit lost as you move further. So just being able to clarify. Just a touch more. Something like that. I'm adjusting things sort of on the fly, but I'm still making sure that all the principles stay true. So something like that. Check that out. This is not a tutorial on shading and rendering and finished drawings, but it's important to be able to start with sketching in something like this before getting to that finished drawing aspect. And then obviously come back in and... Anyways, try that. Have fun.